The hip-hop industry is imploding, Kendrick Lamar might actually kill Drake, and I listened to 18 more albums. This is... You guys know the drill. I listened to a bunch of albums this month. I'm gonna give you a rating, a review, tell you if I think it's worth your time or not. Listen to a lot of stuff as per usual, some good, some not so good. But I've got a lot of stuff to say about each and every one of them. So buckle in, fasten your seatbelts, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the vibe. Let's just hop right in. First, I listened to Visions by Grimes. This is an interesting one. It's one that is highly regarded amongst the music community, but Grimes is also an artist that I'm pretty unfamiliar with outside of like 1 or 2 tracks. And listening to this thing was an interesting experience because on one hand, it's hypnotizing and entrancing, and then on the other, it's kind of monotonous and repetitive, which is not always a bad thing because it does nail vibe, it nails atmosphere, but it kind of results in a little bit of an unengaging listen. Like a lot of these tracks, while sounding good, all kind of sound a little bit too similar. It kind of hurts the replayability a little bit in this specific instance, unfortunately, but there's no denying that Grimes' voice is enchanting and ethereal and otherworldly, and it makes for a really interesting and unique listen. Really enjoyed Genesis and Oblivion. Those are 2 very standout tracks here. And while I don't think that this is a record that I would return to too often, I definitely see the appeal. I definitely understand the enjoyment. Me personally, though, I think I'm gonna give it a 7.5. Next, I listened to How to Leave Town by Car Seat Headrest. I wasn't sure I was rocking with this project when I first started it, admittedly. Car Seat Headrest is one of my favorite bands of all time. Teens of Denial and Twin Fantasy are 2 of my favorite records of all time. Bodies has weaseled its way into my Spotify Wrapped for like 3 consecutive years now. So I hold them pretty close to my heart. And somehow, How to Leave Town has always managed to slip past me. I hadn't listened to it until now. Honestly, a few of these tracks are a little bit too drawn out and not dynamic enough to maintain my attention throughout. The biggest culprit of which being the actual intro track, the ending of Dramamine, which is just a little too repetitive, a little bit too monotonous for my own liking and also what I've come to expect from the band. But on the other hand, some of the longer tracks on this thing are incredible with some fantastic payoffs and some fantastic buildups, like that of Beast Monster Thing and Hey Space Cadet, the latter of which I find to be a top-tier Car Seat Headrest song. And while How to Leave Town may not be my favorite record from the band, it is still a pretty damn good one, if not a little inconsistent. I'm going to give How to Leave Town an 8. Ghost of the sky. Next, I listened to Unicorn by Gunship. This one was recommended to me by a friend. It is a fun and occasionally derivative synth rock record. What it lacks in substance, it makes up for a great vibe and atmosphere. The features all feel properly utilized and flow together pretty seamlessly, in that despite there being so many different voices on this record, it still manages to sound pretty cohesive and consistent throughout. The record comes out guns blazing. It is a lot of fun, and then it quickly loses its steam once you realize that it's going to be an hour of the same shit over and over again. It picks itself up again towards the end, but that middle portion drags a little bit too much for my own liking, which makes Unicorn a little forgettable. It's still pretty good. It's still really solid synth rock. If this is your sound, if this is like your shit, then this is exactly what you would expect out of this record, exactly what you would want out of this record. Really enjoyed Monster in Paradise, Tech Noir 2, Blood for Blood. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 7. At this point, you're pretty much out of my mind. But when I close my eyes, I think about you every time. Next, I listened to Puppy by Brockhampton. This is a first for the channel, and I don't fully know how I feel about it because it is not an official release, it is a leak. But I'm gonna talk about it anyway because Brockhampton was a pretty big part of my teenage life and they meant a lot to me at the time, and so listening to this as a former fan was a pretty interesting experience, and I have a lot to say about it. It's bittersweet hearing the final cut of this holy grail record that fans have been seething for so long. This record holds some of their best work while still sounding pretty unfinished and at times poorly mixed, in part due to it being so unfinished. And for quite a long time, I think a lot of us, myself included, wondered what would happen to Brockhampton as a collective had this record come out, had the Amir drama not gone down. But I was surprised to find that a lot of the content on this record was reworked into tracks that we got further down the line, like the 1990 singles and like a lot of the stuff that we got on Iridescence. But yeah, some of these cuts are pretty rough, especially this record's version of Tape. But ultimately, Puppy feels like an extension and an elevation of the Saturation sound. I don't know if this is better than any of the Saturation records. My gut says it isn't. And Iridescence was such a departure from their original sound, and I'm glad that we got the records that we got, and I worry that if we had gotten this record instead, the band would have gone stagnant. I'm not going to rate this one. It feels wrong considering that it's not actually a finished product, so I'm not going to. But it's a cool leak. I'm glad that we got it. As a fan of Brockhampton, this is a pretty surreal moment and one that I didn't think that we would see. So yeah, Puppy's pretty kick-ass, it's pretty good, and I'm glad that we got it even if it is in its unfinished state. Next, I listened to Only God Was Above Us by Vampire Weekend. I have never been able to get into Vampire Weekend. I don't know what it is. Perhaps I haven't given them a solid shot, but this was my first real Vampire Weekend listen. I noticed that this record in particular was getting some pretty striking reviews amongst the music community, so I decided to give it a shot, and I'm glad that I did. It features some lovely, decadent production, some soothing, melodic vocal performances, and the lyrical substance is also potent and emotional and important. It's a very cleanly cut record with an appropriate runtime, and yeah, there just isn't a lot of filler to be found here. It's all pretty solid work. I think that there were probably one or two tracks that I found to be a little bit less engaging than the other material, but like that didn't really distract me from the overall record. And yeah, while this band may not be particularly for me, I did find a lot of enjoyment in this record. I think that this is one that a lot of people can just kind of hop into, and I'm glad that it's getting the recognition that it deserves because it is a pretty solid indie rock record. So yeah, I'm gonna give Vampire Weekend an 8.
Slugs took my nigga soul, drugs took another one. A rap beef ain't realer than the shit I seen in Cumberland. He averaging one hard burst like every 30 months or something. If he wasn't dissing, then we wouldn't be discussing.
Next, I listened to Might Delete Later by J. Cole. This is a hot button issue right now with the Kendrick Drake drama going down. I'll probably make a video about it in the next couple of weeks, but this is kind of like the catalyst for that. And honestly, this record is just kind of embarrassing. I am not a Cole fan, never have been a Cole fan. I enjoy to an extent 2014 Forest Hills Drive, but I've never considered myself to be a Cole fan. He's just not my vibe. But Might Delete Later honestly just kind of feels like a last-ditch effort for him to remain relevant in the hip-hop scene. Cole's demeanor and lyricism is so cocky, so confident, but he's unable to back any claim that he's making on this record, which again, is just kind of embarrassing. The bars are cringe, his delivery is average, and most of the time it sounds as if he's just kind of fumbling over his own beats. I don't know. I don't want to talk about it a whole lot because that's not the point of this video, but the fact that Cole and Drake thought that they're even in the top 3 is pretty laughable. And honestly, the Drake influence on Cole is pretty evident in this record, with Fever sounding like it's straight off of a newer Drake cut. Yeah, I can't even say that I even liked one track off of this thing. I thought that it was a flop in every sense of the word, and I hated it. Honestly, I'm gonna give it a 3.
Yeah, what you trying to do? Yeah, say what you trying to do.
Next, I listened to Triple Digits by RiTchie. RiTchie's Triple Digits is a record that I fear a lot of people are going to overlook, with him being a smaller figure than a lot of the hip hop that's been coming out within the past couple of months. But it's one that I think a lot of people should give a shot, especially fans of experimental hip hop. It's short, it's fun, it's an experimental record that takes a lot of risks, some of which that pay off, some of which that don't. I've been a pretty casual Injury Reserve fan for a couple of years now, and I've always really dug RiTchie's vocal delivery and his prowess. The energy that he brings to a track is very notable. Tracks like What You Trying to Do and Richie Valens offer some really like cutthroat, aggressive performances. And tracks like Dizzy are just kind of like just plain fun, just him kind of trying out different sounds. And tracks like Get a Fade are just so weird and out there that it just makes for like a very interesting listen, despite me not particularly connecting with some of the material on this thing. With that being said, I don't think that this record is very consistent, to a fault. There are a lot of slow points on this thing, and the experience as a whole is not very fluid nor consistent. And Triple Digits kind of feels like a starting point as opposed to a progression in sound. So I'm interested to see what RiTchie does from here, because he offers a lot of really interesting ideas on this thing. But it's fun. It's for sure fun. I'm gonna give it a 7.
What you say in a day, and it's televised when you're caught in your way with no alibi.
Next, I listened to Life Under the Gun by Militarie. This one was also recommended to me by a friend. Really glad that I gave this one a shot. It's gritty, it's fun, it's an energetic piece of throwback 90s pop punk. I find that a lot of bands that have a similar sound to Militarie fall into this trap of sounding just like ridiculously outdated and incredibly corny. But Militarie is able to pull off the revival genre pretty well. And genuinely, like, you can really tell through this record that these guys are just a fan of that sound. I wish that the tracks were a little bit longer, some of them finish before they're even able to begin. And at times, the short runtime kind of comes off like a bit of a crutch to mask some ideas that haven't been fully fleshed out, potentially. There were also a couple of tracks that felt sonically disjointed and tonally off compared to some of the stronger tracks on this record. Ultimately, though, this is a fun record. If you are into that 90s emo pop punk sound, Militarie are kind of killing it right now. Do It Faster, my friends are having a hard time, Never Fucked Up Once. Like, some of these tracks have stayed in my rotation for the whole month. And yeah, it's a pretty dope record. It's pretty fun. I'm gonna give them a 7.5.
I can't be writing R&B for you. I've been making me a coffee while you've been about to sleep, and now I'm still asleep for you. Can't be writing R&B.
Lit some candles. But we're back. Next, I listened to English Teachers, This Could Be Texas. This is actually a pretty admirable record. I went into this not knowing who this band was, but just saw that they were gaining some traction online, and I really enjoyed what I heard. Grand instrumentation, epic and arena chanting closer moments, and some really unique and elaborate spoken word passages. A lot of this reminded me of some Black Country New Road, which was a welcome sound for me. Honestly, some of my favorite musical moments from this year so far stem from this record. From the beautiful piano outro in Mastermind Specialism to the desperate screams to close out Albert Road. From the dirty riff on Airbnb to the funny yet devastating lyricism on The World's Biggest Paving Slab. I will say some of the writing on this record is a little bit elementary and a little bit cringe at times. Like, it kind of comes off as if they're trying a little bit too hard. And some of the mixing and production feels a little bit wonky at times, but you know, like, the greater moments on this record for sure make up for the dips in quality. I really enjoyed this record. I think that there's a lot of masterful craft to be found in this thing. I don't think it's for everybody. I think it's a little bit difficult to get into. It is a little jarring, but I think that there's a lot to enjoy here. I'm gonna give them an 8.
And I don't know just what to do, I'll find, but feel I'm breaking through my world's a honey shade of blue.
Next, I listen to Maggie Rogers' Don't Forget Me. I have yet to hear something from Maggie Rogers that I have been blown away by, and Don't Forget Me unfortunately follows suit. It's a little uninspired, it's a little one note, and it's, in my opinion, a little bit boring. It's consistent and it's pleasant sounding, but it fails to be dynamic enough to warrant a return to what little it provides. I think that Maggie Rogers is a talented vocalist, and funnily enough, there were many times that I found her vocal performance to give me a lot of like early Taylor Swift era vibes, which was cool. But the production is far too derivative and one-dimensional for me to really find too much enjoyment out of this thing. Wish it was a little bit more daring, wish it was a little bit more willing to take some risks in its sound. It plays it pretty safe. I don't think that I will be returning to this project very often, despite understanding and seeing what a lot of people see in this project. Potentially this might just not be for me. I enjoyed tracks like It Was Coming All Along, The Kill, and Don't Forget Me, but those even are tracks that I don't really find myself returning to too often. Nothing bad, it's inoffensive, and again, it does sound nice, but it kind of just sounds like other stuff that I've heard before. I'm gonna give her a 6.5.
I'm a trap nigga, better watch your hoe. Ain't no gap, nigga, kicking in your door. Chrome Hardy, I just bought the whole store.
Next, I listened to Future and Metro Boomin's We Still Don't Trust You. This thing was a slog to get through, dude. I didn't love their last record, and I certainly do not love this one. I didn't even really write up a review for this one. I just thought that it was boring. I just thought it was so boring. Like I said in my last review for We Don't Trust You, I enjoy Metro Boomin. I think that he's a talented producer. I less so enjoy Future. I don't think that he's the most talented artist. But there are very few cuts on this thing that I enjoy. Even less that I would return to. And honestly, my biggest issue with this record is that it's too long. An hour and a half is far too long for a record that I thought was a deluxe. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about this one at all. I just don't really enjoy it. I don't really enjoy trap. I don't really enjoy the sound, so this might just not be for me. Some people enjoyed it, but yeah, I don't know. I can't really recommend this to anybody. I can name like 5 other artists that are doing the same thing but better. So yeah, unfortunately these guys are gonna get a 5.
I never should have said that I love
Next, I listened to Free Throws, Those Days Are Gone. Those Days Are Gone is incredibly solid and at times fantastic Midwest emo. Really dug the genre fusion between Midwest emo and pop punk. I think that is a sound that works incredibly well, especially in the context of this record. The vocalist tone and energy mirrors that combination really well, and the instrumentals are all killer, no filler. I mean, the sheer energy that the band captures in their sound is enough to make for an engaging listen. As with most Midwest emo, it's a little bit whiny, it's a little bit phoned in, but that's more so a critique that I have of the genre, less so about the record itself. I think that some tracks end before they can even begin, and the whole experience gets a little bit repetitive, despite the runtime only being about 30 minutes. I was hoping for some more dynamic tracks that pushed the mold a little bit further, but the build-ups and the mood that this record sets is truly outstanding. I think that if you're a fan of Midwest emo, this is a classic, and I think that it is an incredibly solid addition to that genre. And the outro on this thing is insanity. It's fantastic. If anything, just give that track a shot, because it's it's really good. Yeah, I'm gonna give Free Throw a 7.5. Next, I listened to White Pony by Deftones. This was an album that was on my dad's list of his favorite albums of all time, and it's pretty great. Like, obviously, it's in like the top 200 of all time on AOTY. It's everything that you would want in an alternative metal record. It has an undeniably strong and encapsulating atmosphere, one that is gritty, disorienting, and full of personality. The guitar work on this record is truly awe-inspiring. Like, some of the riffs on this thing are disgusting. Not to mention the percussion, which has such a presence on every single track. The instrumentation on this thing really comes together in such an orchestral and beautiful way. I mean, any critiques that I have of this record are really critiques that I have of the genre. Full disclosure, I'm not the biggest alternative metal fan, but apart from me not really loving metal too much, this is still a pretty flawless record, and it's absolutely some of the best of its class. Back to School, RX Queen, Life Party, Pink Maggot, all fantastic tracks. It's not one that I return to too often, just because, like I said, the genre is not my favorite, but this is a truly fantastic record. And it, you know, got someone who's not really a fan of metal to really appreciate some elements of the genre, so I'm going to give them a 9.
My boy only breaks his favorite toys.
Howdy, y'all. Sorry. Future Riley here. Turns out I lost some footage. And the only thing that I didn't record was my review for Taylor Swift's The Tortured Poets Department. You know, just arguably the biggest release of the month. So I'm just gonna go ahead and re-record it in my pajamas. So people are trying to claim that this record is Taylor Swift's worst material. I think that those people are being perhaps a little too harsh. I consider myself a pretty casual Taylor Swift fan. I listen to most of her albums, and you know, I pick and choose what I actually enjoy. But with that being said, I am a avid Midnight's hater. I did not like that record. And I think to directly compare the Tortured Poets Department to Midnight's, I think that this is a step up and a pivot in a better direction. The production on this thing is more unique and just a little bit more risk-taking than the stuff that we saw in Midnight's. This record's biggest flaw is, to no surprise to anyone, its writing. So many of these songs are so catchy and so fun and so bubbly, but they are dragged down by some really, really mediocre and borderline cringeworthy lyricism. So no, I don't think this is her best work. I don't think that it's her worst work. I definitely think this thing is a little bit overhated. And I don't think that modern Taylor Swift has the same spark that her older material had. This thing was never going to be as catchy or as fun as Fearless or Red, and it wasn't ever going to be as distinguished or as layered as something like Folklore or Evermore, and that's okay. And this thing is also just okay. And I know that I'm probably going to get burnt on a stick for saying anything remotely bad about this record, but it really is just okay. I don't think it's terrible, but I also don't think that is anything to write home about. I'm going to give it a 6.
Are you gonna marry, kiss, or kill me? It's just a game, but really, I'm betting on all 3 for us two.
Oh, but you thought we were done. You thought we were done. No. There's more Taylor Swift. Next, I listened to Taylor Swift's The Tortured Poets Department, the Anthology. Honestly, it's way better. It's way better than the first disc. These 15 tracks, you know, while not being impeccably better, they do feel better written than the first disc. They're far more personal. They're way less processed. While the first disc felt very manufactured and very corporate, this one feels a little bit more raw, a little bit more real. It felt very reminiscent to some of the stuff that she was doing on Folklore and Evermore, which in my opinion are 2 of her better records. And while I don't think that the tracks on the Anthology are nearly as clean and concise as those on Folklore and Evermore, the fact that they are more reminiscent of that sound is definitely a plus here. And while the content on this second disc is a little better, it's still a little snoozy. It's still got its issues in the writing. I'm not sure why she couldn't have just picked 15 tracks from both discs and made a more solid record. Like, a lot of this stuff feels very, very throwaway. And yeah, I mean, after listening to both of these things back to back, it's evident that there's just far too much filler. It muddies the waters of what could have been an actual really solid record from Taylor Swift. And you know, I know that anything that I say about this record is going to be a hot take, considering that there are so many people that really, really fuck with her music. And while I like Taylor Swift, I like some of her stuff. I really enjoy Folklore. I'm just not a huge Taylor Swift fan, so this wasn't fantastic, in my opinion. Still a better effort than the first disc, though. I'm going to give her a 6.5. Next, I listened to Hovvdy by Hovvdy. I don't have much to say about this record. It's really cute. It's really cute. It's very sweet. It's just some fun, feel-good indie pop. There's something very soft about this record. It's hard to sit down and really dislike anything on here. It's all very inoffensive. Really enjoyed Gene, Ment, and Bad News. I think that those are the standout tracks on this thing. With that being said, I do think that it's a little bit too repetitive, a little bit too derivative for it being just under an hour long. I honestly feel like half of these tracks probably could have gotten cut and we would have gotten a better project for it. But I mean, if you need a pick-me-up, if you need some feel-good music, like, this is kind of exactly what you might expect. I think it's good. I think it's good. I don't think it's anything more than that. I think that a lot of the lyrical content on this thing is very, very repetitive. They're kind of just talking about the same shit over and over and over again. But I don't think that that's a huge issue because the thing still sounds good. So yeah, I'm rocking with Hovvdy. I'm rocking with the record as a whole. I'm gonna give them a 7. Next, I listened to Hyperdrama by Justice. Hyperdrama is great, albeit maybe a little bit underwhelming. This record was absolutely one of the most hyped up records to come out this year. Every single was killer. And the record as a whole, while it's not necessarily like breaking the mold of the genre or anything, it's still a really, really solid output from the group. Because it's delivering on some really, really catchy electro disco bangers, which is really all I really wanted from this thing. I really, really enjoyed the features, from Tame Impala to the Flints to Thundercat. Their voices provide some additional substance to some already spectacular instrumentals. I do think that they blew their load a little bit early with the singles. The singles are by far the best tracks to come out of this thing. And the record gets pretty slow and derivative towards the back end, unfortunately, but it comes out guns blazing. Justice excels at creating an engaging atmosphere. The production is intricate and captivating and honestly just worth a listen. I think overall it's a pretty great record from them, despite them not really pushing things up far enough at times. But yeah, Never Ender, Generator, One Night, All Night, and Mannequin Love are some fantastic cuts off of this thing. I strongly recommend those. Yeah, it's just a fun time. It's just a fun time. It's not doing much outside of it being a fun time, but it's still a fun time, so I'm going to give them an 8.
Turbulent times, oil and cream, you'll be mine for eternity.
And last but certainly not least, I listened to St. Vincent's All Born Screaming. I really enjoyed this thing. It's honestly a little bit fantastic. I strongly believe that this is her best record by far, and the fact that it's self-produced makes it so much more enjoyable. I think that this record holds some of the best production to come out of this year. Everything sounds so interesting and so different and so unique, all while still remaining so catchy, despite it being so gritty and dark at times. I mean, honestly, it really does offer such a unique sound that I haven't really heard before. This record is cinematic, it's catchy, it's emotionally potent, and it's incredibly powerful. I've listened to this thing so many times, and each time I find something new to love about it. I mean, my only real critique is that I wish it was a little bit longer. I think that some ideas that Annie presents on this record could be unfolded and developed even more than they already are, but I don't want to sit here and nitpick. It's pretty fantastic. A lot of great tracks on this thing. Reckless, Broken Man, Flea, Big Time Nothing, and All Born Screaming are all fantastic cuts. And yeah, I'm a big St. Vincent fan. I'm really glad that this turned out to be pretty kick-ass. I'm gonna go ahead and give her an 8.5. I think that this is something that could potentially grow on me with some more listens, but as it stands, it's pretty great. So, and that's it. That's everything that I listened to in the month of April. Hopefully, it was a little bit shorter than last month. I know the last month was a little bit longer, but I listened to a lot of stuff. So May's shaping up to be really exciting. We've got the new Dua Lipa, we've got the new Kamasi Washington, we've got Billie Eilish. So I'm really excited to see some cuts that come out of next month. I think this year has been so fantastic for music in comparison to what we got in 2023. But yeah, I'll be on the lookout for new stuff. As always, if you have an album that you want me to give a shot, put it in the comments. I'll get around to it if I can. And yeah, as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, all of that jazz. As always, I've been Riley from Blamwagon. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good one.
Fuck.